Now, Harvard University carried out the longest study on happiness. They found that the number one thing that makes us happy in life is positive relationships. It's not career achievement, it's not money, or even a healthy diet. You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to start enjoying your life. You can do that much earlier and start living a life that you love and that's true to you. Welcome to Freedom Before FI. Using FIRE and life design techniques, we help you create freedom on your way to FI instead of waiting until you're retired to do the things that light you up. I'm your host Greg, a FIRE movement and life design enthusiast. If you're itching to get freedom now, then let's do this. Hello my friend and welcome back to the show. So you might have read or watched the Netflix documentary, The Blue Zones. If not, the Blue Zones are places around the world with a high percentage of centenarians, i.e. people living at 100 years old or above. They coined it the Blue Zones because when explorer Dan Buettner originally done his research back in the 2000s, I think, he actually used a blue pen to mark these places on a map. So the 5 places that were highlighted during the study included Nicoya in Costa Rica, Sardinia in Italy, Icaria in Greece, Loma Linda in California, those were Seventh-day Adventists, and also Okinawa in Japan. So across these 5 locations, they noticed some recurring patterns in how they live their life. Things like daily natural physical movement, like walking, gardening, or manual labor, eating more plant-based meals, surrounding yourself with a positive community, and having a purpose, a meaning, and a direction. Surprisingly, they also found that people in the blue zones loved the odd glass of vino here and there, and that also helped with their longevity. So fast forward from around the 2000s to around 2016, good friends Hector Garcia and Francesc Miralles wrote the famous book called Ikigai. Okinawa was the front runner of the 5 blue zones, and both of the authors were fascinated by a small village called Ogimi, which also had the nickname the Village of Longevity. Of those recurring themes in the Blue Zone study, they were curious about the purpose piece, or what the Japanese call Ikigai, which is loosely translated as your reason for being. Essentially, that thing that gets you out of bed in the morning. Actually, one of the things they didn't mention in the book was that Hector, one of the authors, was ill at the time and had some sort of stomach complication. Francesc apparently convinced Hector that writing the book about purpose and longevity might actually help heal him. So they obviously wrote the book, and Hector said after it that it was kind of like a therapy for him, and I suppose it was his kind of Ikigai at the time to write the book. Because what they found was, having an Ikigai helped people live longer as it motivated them to continue their purpose and not feel deflated by not having any direction. And by the way, an Ikigai didn't have to be something extraordinary. Like some of the locals' Ikigai was things like gardening, poetry, exercise, family. Anyway, what I loved about the book was that other than the purpose part, there were these other important, simple habits that contributed to a long and healthy life. So the authors interviewed over 100 members of the community, and they found that not only did they live longer, they had fewer chronic illnesses, much lower dementia rates than the global average, and they just had really high levels of vitality for their advanced age. From their research, the authors condensed these habits into the 10 rules of Ikigai, and these are things we can incorporate in our own lives as well. Actually, these Ikigai rules or rituals are one of the best sets of habits I've seen so far. It's holistic. It includes health, mental, social, and physical aspects too. Now, one point I do want to make before we dive in is that, and this is connected to the whole FI movement, where the main goal is to retire early and just relax. So in Japan, the idea of having a purpose is so important, the word retirement doesn't even exist. Typically, they would just continue doing the work they were doing most of their lives and not retire in air quotes, because what they do, i.e. their Ikigai, already brings satisfaction and meaning to their lives. And that, my friend, is what we're trying to pursue on this podcast as well. In the words of the pioneers, let's create a life we don't want to retire from. Alright, without further ado, here are the 10 Japanese habits for a long and healthy life. See if you can incorporate any of these in your journey as well. But if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're probably already doing most of these things already. Anyway, let's dive into the first rule. Okay, so rule number 1 is staying active. This is all about keeping engaged with doing the things that you enjoy and staying away from being inactive. We need to keep our brains working even once we're retired, whether early or traditionally. So this could be working on our passions, our hobbies, community work, or perhaps it's continuing your career that you enjoyed but at reduced capacity. Basically, we shouldn't just be sitting down in front of the TV all week. We have to keep our brains engaged. Otherwise, just like our muscles, our brains will decline if they don't get used as much. So we just have to keep active. During our sabbatical, or mini retirement, as I like to call it, other than spending time with family, I experimented with a few things to see if I enjoy them. For example, growing vegetables, making some homemade pizza, volunteering at non-profits. And they all kind of gave me some clues if I like them, if I'm good at them, or if it's something I can be good at. But some of them weren't as easy as I thought. All right, so rule number 2 is to take it slow. There's an awesome quote in the book, walk slowly and you'll go far. I took this as if we're always rushing around, ticking things off our to-do list, getting stressed, or working loads of hours and not taking a break, we're more likely to get burnout quicker and ultimately it's not sustainable. We do need to incorporate self-care and a bit of me time in our lives. It's like regularly maintaining your car to make sure it lasts longer. Now this is really important in this day and age, especially in this sort of hustle culture. And it happens to me sometimes as well. Like even when I was on my sabbaticals, the first few months I would rest, maybe then do some slow travel. But then about halfway through, I'd have these like little side projects, meetings with people, or building something, testing something. Even if it's things I really enjoy and passionate about, I realised you can get a bit burnt out even doing the things that you love. So let's just keep an eye out for that and to take it slow. So some things that have helped me include putting blocks in my calendar for slow down time. It could be a leisurely walk, going to a coffee shop, or whatever floats your boat really. Another thing that I've tried, but not the most successful, is removing things from my calendar if it's not essential. That time could be used for some good old self-care and slow down time. Okay, let's go to rule number 3. Now, of all the 10 rules, I feel like this one's speaking to me specifically. So rule number 3 is don't fill your stomach. And this is by far the hardest for me, especially because I love carbs like rice, chips, pasta, pizza. Rice is life, as they say here in the Philippines. Anyway, in Japan, they have a phrase, harahachibu, which very loosely translates to only eat till 80% full. And it's one of the Japanese secrets to longevity. Of course, this reduces calorie intake and also puts less strain on our stomachs. Anyway, I won't say too much on this one as I need to work on this myself. But essentially, it's a nice practical way to try not to overeat because I think some Japanese, as a ritual, would say harahachi bu before they eat just to remind themselves to not eat too much. Alright, so rule number 4 is to surround yourself with good friends. Now, Harvard University carried out the longest study on happiness. They found that the number 1 thing that makes us happy in life is positive relationships. It's not career achievement, it's not money, or even a healthy diet. So this is probably the most important rule. And I know we can get busy with work, maybe trying to get fit, working on our love lives, or maybe you have infants you're looking after. But as much as possible, let's allow time for our social life too. Now, this is another one that I'm a little bit guilty of as well. And I could probably do a bit more to keep in touch with old friends. Sometimes my focus can be mainly on like family, side projects, traveling, moving house, health, hobbies, but I can definitely do a bit more on this vertical for sure. All right, let's dive into rule number 5, which is get in shape for your next birthday. Okay, so this one's pretty self-explanatory, but I like how they worded this. It's like an annual reminder. For me, I don't think you need like a strenuous workout regime that you're doing like every day or anything. Since I got in my 30s, I've built a habit of doing regular exercise around 3 to 5 times a week, depending on how busy I am on some days. This actually really varies where we live, and we've moved around a lot in the last, say, 5 years. Sometimes we have a gym nearby to work out. Sometimes I'm near some football fields. Sometimes there's like a park we can run in and do some workouts in like the monkey bars. But recently, since there's a basketball court in the village that we're staying in, I've been playing a lot of basketball lately, and I've been doing some calisthenics workouts at home too. So I'd alternate the activities, for example, calisthenics on Mondays and Wednesdays, basketball on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and maybe like a run on a Friday. And then either rest on the weekend or do some sort of light exercise on Saturday morning. Obviously, there are days when like my body feels a bit achy or I'm not feeling well or I've got loads of projects one day, so I might not do all of that. But at least I've got those built into my calendar, so to try to keep some level of consistency. And the good thing is I've managed to get closer to my target weight by doing that this year. But again, it's that calorie intake that's holding me back. It's those tasty carbs again. Anyway, the key thing here is to find a weekly exercise routine that works for you. You could start small and just build from there. It will be my birthday end of December, so I'm going to aim to get in shape for that. Thank you for spending your time with us today. If you need more help, you can check out our free guides and services on our website, freedombeforephi.com. If you have a burning question or just want to chat, don't hesitate to drop me an email at greg@freedombeforephi.com. If you found the show useful and want to be notified of future episodes, you can click follow on Spotify, Apple, or the app you're currently using right now. If you think the episode will help a friend or a colleague, feel free to share it with them. And lastly, if you learned just one good thing that will help you in your journey and you want to help us out, please do leave a 5-star rating on your podcast player app. That would help us out loads. Alright, so that wraps up this episode today. On the next episode, we'll be continuing with the remaining 5 rules for a long and healthy life. I'll catch you then. Oh, and don't forget, practice gratitude, live life by your design, and do things that make you smile. You got this.